David, ask me after, and we'll go through it. We'll go through it. All right. Hopefully, are we there?
Campaign, man.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about before. But we won't do that while we're on the internet. Are we there yet? Come on. I think
my remarks have nothing to do with politics.
there you go. That's great. We love that. Okay, great. We are online. Thank you, everyone who is joining us from around the world, and or you could be here in Topeka, Kansas as well. This is Torah study at Temple Beth Shalom here in Topeka, Kansas. We are starting today. We are in Second Kings. We're in 13, I think. Yes. Okay. So we're starting. We will be opening up to Second Kings chapter 13, verse 1. I'll be sharing the screen so everyone at home can follow along. And we will start with our blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. If you say amen, you get full credit.
Amen.
Amen. I thought I saw the door, but then nothing happened, so I guess I was wrong. Okay, so right, we had King Joash of Judah, and he was the first Israelite, or the first, I guess in this case, Judean king to pay tribute, or one of the first, the second actually. The first one stripped the gold out of Solomon's temple, and then now he took all the stuff. He took stuff from the treasuries of the temple, and he gave it to the king of Aram, Hazael, who we saw him get made king. He used to be a military adjutant, but now he's the king of Aram, and he gets paid tribute, Hazael, so that Judah won't get sacked. That causes the people, his soldiers, this feels real bad, they kill him. And now we're getting the kind of political instability we've seen from the beginning in Israel in Judah. So his courtiers formed a conspiracy against Joash and assassinated him. But now we're going to take a look back at Israel in chapter 13. I'm just giving you that as that's what had just happened. Meanwhile, in Judah, and now we're going to meanwhile in Israel. So in the 23rd year of King Joash, son of Ahaziah of Judah. So this is before what just happened, at least just before what just happened to Joash, because Joash is still alive in this. Jehoahaz, did I get that right? Where are we? Jehoahaz, yep, that's it. Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, became king over Israel in Samaria for 17 years. So Jehu is getting now, it's a little bit of a dynasty. Jehu reigned for a while, and then the zealot that he was, mostly. And then now his son reigns for a good long time. However, in verse 2, he did what was displeasing to God, what was evil in the eyes of God. Vayas hara be'enei Adonai v'yelech achar hatot. Right? He followed the sins. Right? He did what was evil in the eyes of God, and he followed the sins of Yerovam, son of Nevat, who caused Israel to sin. And he did not turn away from them. So he did, he let them worship golden calves, and the northern kingdom seems to have always been a little more permissive and therefore bad, according to the Deuteronomist. But they seem to always have been a little more religiously pluralist. Like maybe you would even say they seem to have allowed different. Now the question is it pluralist and he's allowing this to happen, or is it what I would say truly blasphemous? Is he replacing worship of God with worship of these idols and things? In that case, I'm with the let's punish him folks. I'm like, that's no good. It's one thing to be a pluralist and to say I'm going to worship God according to the way Jews do, but other people can do what they like. That's what I am. I'm a pluralist. I'm fine with that. If that's what he's doing, and I'm not sure it is, but if that's what he was doing, that would have been something I would have defended. But I don't think that's what he's doing. I think by causing Israel to commit them, I think he's insisting that they do these things, and by forcing them to be blasphemous, to be idolaters, that's the bigger sin, right? Even bigger than you being an idolater, which is already they'll kill you. But like that's already bad enough. But coercing someone else to be an idolater. Remember, there's a principle even here, even though it hasn't been stated by the rabbis in the Talmud. This is why we believe the oral Torah comes from Sinai, that it's been here the whole time. That Kol Yisrael Arabim Zeh Bazeh, that all Israel is responsible for one another. And we get that from back in the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses. The idea that the people should rebuke their neighbor if they do wrong, lest the community sin. That everyone should be wary of their own sins, of their neighbor's sins, of the community sins, not in a checking up on people disrespectful way, not in a shaming anybody way. The rabbis are very clear that, first of all, shaming someone is like killing someone. You never shame someone. And when you do tochacha, when you do rebuke, there's a specific way you do it. And it's done, you check with someone to make sure they're open to getting rebuke. You do it lovingly. No, you do it in a way that they can hear it. Because why would you rebuke someone in such a way that they won't repent, that they won't turn back? What you want is to end the sin.
That takes a great amount of skill.
Yes, it's very hard to do it correctly, but this is when done the way envisioned by the Torah, rebuke is a loving act, not a challenge, not a punishment, not a not smacking someone with something. That's not what the point is. So that when it says here that he causes Israel to commit these sins,
referencing the New Testament again, of the you're condemned for leading children astray. That's a major sin.
Yes, I think Judaism and Christianity both have the ethic that causing others to stray is worse than straying yourself, because you're manipulating someone into evil. And we can understand religiously that there's again, Jews and Christians, I believe, can understand religiously that there's something inherently worse about that because of its communal impact, because it has impact beyond one's own immediate radius, but in fact poisons society. And both Judaism and Christianity care very much about the health of society overall, because you can't build a better world in any religion that tries to build a better world and not care about what society looks like. Because how can you do that? You can't know what a better world looks like unless you have a design for society.
Samaria is in the northern kingdom, right?
Yes, Samaria is in the northern kingdom.
It's always kind of considered an outcast, and Samaritans are. I know.
Samaritans is a different thing, because so who moves to after the exile, when the northern kingdom gets exiled, what happened in these days when exiles happened is kingdoms would take the leadership and religious leadership and aristocracy of a kingdom and literally move them to another kingdom. Why? Because if they don't speak the language, if they don't have roots, if the people that they move to distrust them, if the common people of the land they move to distrust them, they won't be able to organize a rebellion to the greater empire. And they won't be able to organize it from their own land if they don't live there. So they would just, if they took over this land and this land, they just take their leaderships and all that and swap them. And say, Israel, you now live in Babylon, or you live in here, or we'll take you to our city, or we'll move you to this, we'll put you somewhere, but we won't keep you where you started. This is where you get by the rivers of Babylon, this is the idea that literally we were carried off, and it was that not every single Israelite, but rather the leaders of the tribes, the high priests, the people The class, right? The influential class and leadership class. This used to be a thing. Britain had this famously, this idea of a ruling class, like that there should be. So, though we don't have it in America, it used to exist, and this culture, all cultures had it, and this one had it too. And they would take the ruling class and remove them from their land so that they couldn't incite rebellion. And of course, the first major empire that succeeded in not doing that was. Who do we love? No. I mean, we do love Israel. We love Israel. But the empire that did it to us that we love anyway.
Oh, England, or you.
Way earlier than that. Persia.
Okay.
So when the Persians come to power, when they replace the Neo-Babylonians as the preeminent Middle Eastern power, and are the first real, remember, the Assyrians don't get from India to Europe. Or to Turkey anyway. The Babylonians, the Neo-Babylonians never do either. The Persians, they do. And how do they do it? They do it not by mix-matching the leadership classes. Instead, they send everyone back to where they're supposed to be, and they say, you can do what you like, and we'll give you all kinds of autonomy, and all you have to do is provide soldiers and taxes. Now, shockingly, this was not a common thing at the time. But it turned out to be brilliant. It worked. Not only did it work, we call Koresh or Cyrus the Great, he's known as Cyrus the Great to history, we call him Koresh, Melech Paras, king of Persia, in our book, and we'll get to it at some point when we get all the way through when we get to Ezra and Nehemiah. We call him Mashiach, a Messiah, right? Because he's an anointed king who returned the Jewish people to the land.
Ironically, he was an Iranian.
He's Persian, right?
Yeah.
Not ironic. The thing is, Persia throughout the Talmud, there's a constant reference of two empires in the Talmud in conflict. The good, benevolent empire. Again, we never envision, the rabbis in the Talmud never envision that the empires that rule the world, they always believe they'll exist. The rabbis seem to be right, by the way. But they never think we're going to be it. We only want, quite frankly, this is this world that we live in now, and I hope it stays this way, is the world the rabbis dreamed of. They never wanted to be an empire. They wanted the world to be guided by a benevolent empire instead of an evil one. Who did the rabbis see as the evil empire?
Rome.
Yes. The evil empire is represented by Rome, the Roman Empire, and its martial, gladiatorial, warlike nature, its rejection of Greek philosophy, right? It suppressed from the Greco-Roman world, it suppressed the philosophical, theological drive and moved itself into the populist, martial, even technological, into a different world. And its cruelty, its barbarism, as the rabbis saw it, and its violence against the Jews. It can't be separated that the Romans did much more terrible violence than the Persians ever did. Obviously, we could later talk about the Persians of today if you'd like. But the Romans were likened to Edom, were the children of Esau, that they were the thorn in our heels, and that they would always and that whatever empire descended from Rome, the rabbis would get more evidence for this as Christendom took over Europe and persecuted the Jews. As the inheritors of Rome, the Catholic Church would take this role, and any empire seen to be Rome-like in its brutality, I suppose, and among other ways, especially to the Jews, would be seen as an evil empire, and opposed to them would be the good empire, represented as the descendants of the Persians.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't Netanyahu, in speaking to the Iranians, speak to that kinship along?
Always. And by the way, we are always no one in Israel, no Jew that I know in America or in Israel or anywhere hates Iran. Every Jew I know, partially because of this theological historical link, deeply wants the Persian people to be free, so that Iran can be. I mean, many people in Iran want to be friends with Israel, but their theological, Islamofascist, whatever you want to call it, leadership refuses to let them. They've also had their internet turned off, as it turns out, for like 3 months now. So we don't know what they really want or are thinking or is going on, because we can't hear from anyone except the regime within Iran. But believe me, Iranians and Israelis and Jews more broadly are very warm towards each other. It's just the Islamic Republic, who we both hate, the Iranian people and the Jewish people and Israelis, that we'd like to see dismantled. In any event, these are these two empires. It's important. And now I've given you that whole thing. Hopefully that's of some use to somebody here or on the internet. God was angry with Israel, verse 3, and repeatedly delivered them into the hands of King Hazael of Aram and into the hands of Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael. Right? So all the days of Jehoahaz, both for Hazael and his son, they just kept hitting them. They just kept launching raids, launching wars, taking stuff, killing people. And Aram Damascus continues to get stronger, and Israel continues to get weaker, because God is displeased. Verse 4, but Jehoahaz pleaded with God, and God listened to him, having seen the suffering that the king of Aram inflicted upon Israel. So God granted Israel a deliverer. What is the word here? Moshiach. No, not Moshiach. Not anointed one. That's a different word.
No.
This is Moshiach, which comes from like Hosea, deliverer, deliverance, right? Like this is a savior, but not that kind of savior. Just a champion, someone who will win this current fight, right? Just like in the Judges period, constantly God was summoning judges who were essentially champions of the Jewish people who won individual fights, whether it was Devorah or Gideon or Samson or whoever. I love his Hebrew name is better. Shimshon, much better. Anyway, okay. So God granted Israel a savior, a deliverer, and they emerged they gained their freedom from Aram, and Israel dwelt in its homes as before.
Excuse me, do we ever find the name of the deliverer?
Yes, I think it's actually going to be Jehoahaz's son.
Okay.
I think it's going to be, the timeline is kind of going to be, think of it as Jehoahaz, after a life of not doing so well and getting raided, on his deathbed is like, God, I might have messed up, but this people need your help. They're worth it, even if I'm not. I'm sorry. Please do for my son what I wasn't able to do, and help us win this fight. That's how I kind of view this. And then God's like, okay, and the son is going to go forward and beat up Aram a little bit. And that's going to return sovereignty to Israel. They won't be under the dominion and constant raiding of Aram, at least for a while, because of this plea and God's, right? Because God says God will always remember and protect the people of Israel. But it's hard. It's the same kind of thing. It's like a parent, but again, on a celestial scale. When your children do badly, what do? You have to punish them. God has already laid out what the punishments are for doing badly. When we do badly, we can't expect God to just say, that's okay. So the punishments continue because the people continue to do badly. But there are these moments when a moment of goodness or remembrance or invoking the people or the patriarchs or something will rouse God to cause victory for Israel. So it says, however, they did not. So verse 6, However, they did not depart from the sins that the house of Jeroboam had caused Israel to commit. They persisted in them. Even the sacred post, Asherah, the feminine goddess of the Canaanites, stood in Samaria. In fact, Jehoahaz was left with a force of only 50 riders, 10 chariots, and 10,000 foot soldiers. For the king of Aram had decimated them and trampled them like the dust under his feet. So it was like Germany after the First World War. They were totally not. They had like it was only a token military, and it wasn't really enough to defend themselves against any real attack. Again, foot soldiers might sound like a lot, but again, remember, without chariots, those people are going to get run through by. The other side has 5,000 chariots against the 50 chariots these people have. You're done. You're donezo. 10,000 foot soldiers isn't worth anything. They're going to get destroyed, and run over by the horses and stuff. It's going to be bad. The other events, verse 8, the other events of Jehoahaz's reign and all his actions and his exploits are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Jehoahaz rested with his ancestors, and he was buried in Samaria. His son Joash succeeded him as king. This was the first time that a third-generation ruler of the same dynasty ruled in the northern kingdom of Israel. Yehu's line. Isn't that's so? It's been a while now. We've had a bunch of kings, but this is the first time that a dynasty made it to the third. Normally it was a guy and then he was done. Or it was a guy and his son. That happened a lot. And then we switched. This is the first real political stability Israel has seen. Not like Judah went for a good run, not just David and Solomon, but then they went for like 4 more kings before they had, they went a bunch more kings before they had a disruption. But this is, yeah. Anyone have any thoughts about this section before I move on? I don't want to rush.
One question.
Yeah.
Jehoahaz slept with his fathers, so he's allowed to reunite with his ancestors. Am I thinking correctly that he could have been punished more severely by not being allowed to sleep?
It's one of those things, though. He could have been, but at the same time, it's not like he instituted any new bad things.
Yeah.
He was a bad king because he just kept doing what everyone had done before him. And remember that also, there's this weirdness in but of course, as God is, it seems pretty consistent. But it is kind of a weirdness in which God, just like when God says the Torah isn't far for you, it's inside you. God says that every generation will interpret the Torah. God says that the Talmud, the rabbis relay that God says that, what we do as minhag essentially gets made, as, holy in a way. Not that blasphemy can be holy, certainly not. But I think there's just he didn't do anything new bad. Mm-hmm. He was just respecting what his ancestors had done, even if it was bad. So we're going to call him bad because it is bad, and we want them to do better. We're not saying he's a good king, but we're not going to go all the way to having dogs eat his bones. That's for people who caused the kingdom to fall into serious sin. And by the way, again, I remind you, Ahav and Isabel, who are known as they are the token, like the worst people who need to get gotten. They presided over actually a period of prosperity in the kingdom. It was a religious problem that we have with them, and we do have a religious problem with them because they were one of the chief architects of the idolatry that we see the Northern Kingdom. They're like the patron saints of the idolatry of the Northern Kingdom in some ways. So it's just I feel like there's we're not going to put anyone who just follows, we're not going to put them at the same level as, what I mean? There's degrees, it just wasn't, he wasn't that bad. He seems to have some real faith if God listened to him to help his son become victorious. So maybe he wasn't that bad. He was just bad by the, I mean, there's a rubric. They're just following a rubric.
What I'm thinking is that in the level
Yeah.
of punishment, your lineage can be destroyed, you will
Yeah.
be killed, but even worse than that is you're not allowed to join your ancestors. Am I right?
I think the lineage thing is the ending the line is generally considered the most severe
Okay.
punishment. Then probably the bones thing, dogs eating bones instead of them resting with your ancestors. Yeah, that's probably the order, I guess. I haven't really thought about it that deeply though, so I might be mixing stuff up. Okay, verse 10. So now we're gonna again, now there's two Yoashes here, by the way. So there's that Yoash, and we're gonna call him Yehoash. Because it says in the 37th year of King Yoash of Judah, who was already ruling, Yehoash, which he was called Yoash, but remember, we also do this a lot. We'll change Ya to Yehu or Yahoo in the end, because that's more of a regal name than than the other version. That's more of a more common inclusion of God's name, right? It's like you can be Yonatan or you can be Yehonatan. Both are Jonathan, but one has the more regal Yeho and one is just Yo. Which is still, it means the same thing. It's just, there are these little nuances and intricacies. But so we're going to call him Yehoash as opposed to Yoash of Judah, so that we don't get confused. Yehoash, son of Yehoahaz, who just died, became king of Israel in Samaria for 16 years. Now remember, Yehu ruled for a while, and then Yehoahaz reigned for 17 years, and then his son Yehoash reigns for 16 years. So we're getting that's decent reigns. Unfortunately, verse 11, he did what was displeasing to God. He did not depart from any of the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nebat. Now, remember, why do we say that? Because again, this is real. I said Ahav and Isabel are responsible. Truly, in the end, this is the guy responsible, the first king, because he instituted these things as the first king, and they all just kept it after that. Some of them did worse, some of them didn't. I just wish if someone would just uproot that Asherah, they'd get so much credit from the Deuteronomists. Even if they didn't change anything else, they'd be like, he was maybe okay. He did some displeasing things, but he did this really good thing that we like. Anyway, so he persisted in all those, in the path of sin. The other events of Joash's reign, and it means Yehoash, but it's calling him Joash here. And all his actions and his exploits in his war with King Amaziah of Judah are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Now, we're about to hear about this war. If you're like, what? There's a war between Israel and Judah? Yes, but we're about to get to it. Yehoash rested with his ancestors, and Jeroboam occupied his throne. His son. It's his son, and it's Yeroboam the second, right? Jeroboam was the first king, so this is the first king where it's a repeated name. So his son is King Jeroboam the second of Israel. And Joash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. During Joash's reign, Elisha had been stricken with the illness of which he was to die. So now we're going to get, out of nowhere, it's been a while since we heard from Elisha, right? We've had a little bit since we've talked to Elisha. Well, while this was happening during this reign, Elisha had been stricken with the illness of which he was to die, and King Joash of Israel, Yehoash again, went down to see him. That sounds nice. He wept over him and cried, "Father, Father, Israel's chariots and riders." Right? And what does that mean to you?
He's complaining about how badly a war is going or a conflict.
Okay, it could be. But the king is going. Now remember, for a king of Israel to visit a prophet like this is like unprecedented. I just gotta say, not unprecedented for the kings of Judah, but for the kings of Israel who we've known. Remember, we even had that king where he was like, I forget which one it was, but he said something to the prophet in front of the king of Judah. And the king of Judah was like, hey, you can't talk to a prophet of God that way, man. Like, I know we're kings, but like God is still God, like back when Judah really cared about, about God. Anyway, so it could be that. What else could it be?
I'm cheating. I'm reading the footnote.
Okay, that's fine.
Elisha, as defender of Israel, father,
He calls him my father, Avi.
Yeah.
The king of Israel calls the prophet my father.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, you are essentially the source of the strength of the nation of Israel. In other words, you are Israel's chariots and riders. This is an incredibly, we were just saying, it's like he did evil things, and you're like, but how could he still be buried with his ancestors? You don't want this guy buried with, I mean,
Yeah.
I think he's probably okay. That's just my, maybe a C plus, but he didn't get a failing grade. That's what I mean. The Deuteronomist looks like it's pass fail on everyone because it just goes through. He did what was displeasing. It was evil. It's like, yes, okay, but like, remember that God balances Deen and Rachamim, judgment and mercy. So God isn't just anger and punishment. God loves us. God wants the best for us. That's why God put us on this earth. So, anyway. So in verse 15, Elisha said to him, get a bow and arrows. And the king brought Elisha a bow and arrows. Then Elisha said to the king of Israel, again, remember, Elisha, to his dying breath, so theatrical, such a theater king. This guy loves a good show. And he's like, get me a bow. Okay, so the king gets him a bow. Then he said to the king of Israel, grasp the bow. And when the king had grasped it, Elisha put his hands over the king's hands. Open the window toward the east, he said, and he opened it. Elisha said, shoot, and he shot. Then he said, an arrow of victory for God, an arrow of victory over Aram. You shall rout Aram completely at Aphek. Elisha then said, now pick up the arrows. And the king picked them up. Strike the ground, he said to the king of Israel. And the king struck the ground 3 times and stopped. The man of God, the prophet, was angry with him and said to him, if only you had struck 5 or 6 times, then you would have annihilated Aram. As it is, you shall defeat Aram only 3 times. Okay. Elisha died and he was buried. Now bands of Moabites used to invade the land at the coming of every year. It's also funny because like Ruth comes in one of the, they invaded the land. And also like some of them were migrants, right? Some of them were probably moving, but they're invading. Like it is an invasion. We're thinking about. Used to do this at the beginning of the year. It could be that they came or they just came after Elisha died, or with the kingdom of Israel in a weakened state, the Moabites started to raid the land because they were in a bad state. Once a man was being buried when the people caught sight of such a band, so they threw the man into Elisha's grave and made off. When the dead man came in contact with Elisha's bones, he came to life and stood up.
We need a new Broadway play.
Yeah.
Um,
All about Elisha's bones.
Yeah.
Well, so this, what is that about? Let's talk about that for a moment. When the dead man came, what is going on? Has this ever happened before with Elisha? Just like that, yes. Like that. Thank you. The kid blew the breath of life into the Shunammite woman's child, and he came back to life. And Elijah done that too, actually. And we said that was a similar story. But Elisha had asked for something when he became prophet. He asked God for something. Do you remember what it was?
Twice the amount of spiritual power of Elijah.
He wanted to merit to do twice the miraculous power of Elijah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, after his death, he was granted his wish.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, he brought 2 people back to life when Elijah had only brought 1.
Mm-hmm.
And thus Elisha, in that way, doubled the power of Elijah. Not replacing Elijah. Elijah's place is number 2 prophet, or at least in this period. We'll obviously get some prophets that are coming that are going to put themselves on the hierarchy list up in the top 5, obviously. But for the moment, he's slotted in very solidly in number 2 under Moshe. And it'll take a lot of work for anyone else to try and get into number 2, and they might not be able to get there. But Elisha currently is slotted in very strongly at number 3.
Mm-hmm.
I am sorry for any Elisha fans of the theatricality. He probably won't keep that number 3 spot for all that long. We're going to get some books coming up in which we're going to get some prophets who are probably going to displace him. But he's a real solid choice at the moment. And he certainly in this way doubled the prophetic power of his master Elijah, Eliyahu Hanavi.
Is it safe to say he still stays a prophet? He may lose his rank.
Oh, he doesn't lose nobody lost who loses rank?
Well,
Nobody
at least
loses a rank.
3 and
Oh, no, wait. They're all still prophets. I'm just saying on the power rankings. If we're saying like who's the top 5 prophets, if we're ranking them, I'm saying right now I would say he's a solid number 3. But I'm not sure he's going to be there at the end when we finish the prophetic books.
What's striking to me, in my childhood religious education, I certainly knew of Elisha, but he was never a major figure in that teaching to me. Not as much as...
Well, often when we teach kids Tanakh, we don't feel we have that much time. We really want to make sure they get Jewish literacy and the most important figures. And so when we talk prophets, we really want to go over Moshe, Elijah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, the big 5. Not that there aren't the 12 minor prophets, and obviously the prophets of the kingship era, where we have these, besides Elijah, who's on the list. We really, but that's more of we've got the big 5, and we want our kids to all be able to name and know about the big 5. And if we go deeper than that, if they're interested, obviously it'd be nice if they knew all of them. I think each of them or some of them, not all of them are that fascinating, but some of the minor prophets are extremely fascinating. And really messed up, quite frankly. Their lives and their missions. But, and obviously later we get people like Jonah, who's a fun prophet, who has a hero's journey all in one short book.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are there any writings about what Elisha did after reviving a child to the end? I mean, there's a whole big gap there.
Yeah, so this is the thing. I don't have it. There could be midrash or something. I don't have. I mean, I just have what I'm not in it. I don't have.
Talmud doesn't.
Here's the problem. If it does, the Talmud's real long. I've read a lot of it, but I don't remember every page of the Talmud. So it might. I don't remember. I just don't remember.
Anyway,
I'd have to look it up.
Hasn't become a part of the Jewish tradition.
It hasn't become a part of my understanding.
Right.
I can only teach you from what I know, and I don't recall I don't recall other stories. But not saying they're not there. I'm just saying it's not something I know. Okay.
This is striking.
Yeah.
He's not even alive and blowing breath into something. It's just...
It just came in contact with his bones, right?
Yeah.
There's spiritual value in this bone.
Yeah, they usually sometimes they buried in like caves. They didn't like bury. They would like inside a cave. They would have these like pit corners inside caves, and that's where they put people. And so that's kind of what this is. It's like they were walking by an outcropping and they were gonna bury him in this one, and this band of raiders was coming through, so they were like, "Oh no!" and they tossed him into this other cage, which happened to be Elisha's. And the guy's like, "Oh, I'm awake," because Elisha, you know. Nobody ever tried it again, I guess. Nobody was like, "Hey, maybe we should throw a dead body in there," and it didn't happen. Right? Nobody was going for that, I guess. Okay. So we'll move on to verse 22 and a new story. So, and again, kind of not a new story because we kind of heard about it just now with Elisha's final theatrical moment with the king, in which he promised him he could win 3 times, even though at first he said, "You'll just vanquish him." And then he's like, "Bot, bot, bot." He's like, "If you'd done like 5 or 6, you'd have done it." But nope, not enough. Elisha, what a trickster. Okay, so King Hazael of Aram had oppressed the Israelites throughout the reign of Jehoahaz. And then Hazael's son Ben-Hadad did too. But God was gracious and merciful to them and turned back to them for the sake of the covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Right? This is the thing. People throughout our history, sorry, I'll finish the sentence. God refrained from destroying them and still did not cast them out from the divine presence. Right? Even though Aram kept beating them, Israel wasn't carried off. It wasn't totally destroyed. Why? Yes, the Zechus, the due to the honor that God has for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our patriarchs, and I guess today in the Reform movement we would say Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebecca, Jacob and Rachel, and the one he didn't like so much. Sorry, later. And because of their honor, God was like, you know, God will always remember the covenant, because God said God will always remember the covenant that God made with our patriarchs and matriarchs. God made that covenant. That covenant is everlasting. That is inherent in Jewish belief. Obviously, in other religious faiths, that is not inherent. Not every religion believes that this is an everlasting covenant, obviously, but we believe it is. And this is further proof of it here in 2 Kings. It is telling us that because of that, God wouldn't do that. And later, even when they do get destroyed, it will say God will take them back to their land when the right penance has been done. Verse 24, when King Hazael of Aram died, his son Ben-Hadad succeeded him as king. And then Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, recovered from Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael, the towns that had been taken from his father Jehoahaz in war. 3 times Joash defeated him, and he recovered the towns of Israel, which fulfilled Elisha's prophecy that he would defeat Aram 3 times.
But the coverage doesn't extend to 4, 5, and 6. I mean, he gets 3 times, and then
it just restores Israel's place. In other words, they don't beat them, but they fight them back out of their land.
and get control.
Right, they get control over their territory again. And now we're gonna move finally. It was a nice long reign for Joash, the southern Joash. And so in the 2nd year of King Joash of Israel, Amaziah, son of King Joash of Judah, became king. Amatyahu is his name. Again, he was Amaziah probably before he became king. And so you got a Yah there at the end. And so he just lengthened it to Yahu. So Amatyahu. Which again is like God's strength, right? Right. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jehoadan of Jerusalem. That's fun. He did what was pleasing to God, but not like his forefather David. He did just as his father Joash had done. So he wasn't just like David, but we've now gotten two long-reigning good kings of Judah in a row. Judah seems pretty stable, right? And again, he did what was pleasing to God, which is easier for a king of Judah to do, as I've reminded you many times, because they have Jerusalem in the temple. So as long as they don't put idols in there and stuff, they're usually pretty, and they let things go the right way. They're much easier. It's much easier for them to please God than the northern kingdom. Verse 4, but however, the shrines were not removed. The people continued to sacrifice and make offerings at the Bamot. Right? These problem of these private altars. You know, each town would have one, so they wouldn't have to go all the way to Jerusalem. It was convenient. It was like a branch of the temple. But God didn't like it. Everyone in Israel and the priests and the king were fine with it. God didn't like it. That's what's going on here. Again, it was easier for the people. The people liked it. It was God that didn't like it. 1 second. Once Amatyahu had the kingdom firmly in his grasp, he put to death the courtiers who had assassinated his father, the king. Oh, okay. But he did not put to death the children of the assassins, in accordance with what is written in the book of the Besefer Torah Moshe. Right? Not just in the book of the teaching of Moses, but in the Torah, he's saying. As written in the Torah, where God commanded, parents shall not be put to death for children, nor children be put to death for parents. They shall be put to death only for their own crimes. So again, this is a king who, right? Remember, Deuteronomy didn't just want the king to have priests and let them do their thing. Deuteronomy wanted a king that would write a Torah. Why would he have to write his own Sefer Torah or Sefer Torah Moshe, as this book is calling it? So that you would know it. When you write something, you remember it better. And better than someone reading it to you is you reading it, is you writing it yourself. This is a king. Maybe he did that because this king knows the Torah. And he says, I won't do this thing that many kings do because God doesn't like it. It's a sin, and I won't do it. Even if I could be in danger from it, I won't sin. That's great. Amatyahu is like a hero. He's a gibor, right? So it would have been so easy for him to do the wrong thing and to choose to do what the Torah says, and anyway, is great. Verse 7, he defeated 10,000 Edomites in the Valley of Salt, and he captured Selah in battle and renamed it Yoktiel, as is still the case. Then Amatyahu sent envoys to King Yehoash, son of Jehoahaz, son of Jehu of Israel. Right, we're getting the full 3 lines of them there. With this message, come, let us confront each other. Why is he doing this?
Is he wanting to reunite the kingdom?
I would say, yeah. I would say he just beat up Edom. He feels like the dynasty is solid. He's got power. The army is strong. They're growing again. Maybe. I mean, it was always God's intention that one day someone would come along and bring about the unification of the Jewish people in one country. I think Amatyahu is saying, why not me? I could be like David.
Yeah.
Again, this is the comparison here is part of why it said at the beginning he wasn't quite like David. He doesn't get to do David things, right? Only David gets to do David. Very few people get to do David things. Really impressive, unbelievable, unifications and battles and changing the landscape and permanent status of the Jewish people. Not that many kings get to do that.
Any,
What?
any kings get to do like David?
David, Solomon gets to. He built the temple after
Yeah.
all.
Okay.
I would say Josiah gets to. I would say maybe King Hezekiah a little bit. Yeah, that's probably the end of the list, but a couple. But less than David and Solomon. Obviously, David and Solomon are the S tier. They are the top. They are the top tier of of kings. It only goes downhill from David and Solomon. They're the only two up in that S tier. Everybody else is A. Sorry, this is like an online thing, but it goes S A B C D F. And so S is the top, and the only two S ones are David and Solomon. And then there's a couple A ones like Josiah and Hezekiah, and maybe Amaziah, a couple of them that are really good. Maybe Yehu, if you're into that sort of thing, into that rebellious zealot kind of thing. I don't know. God was kind of into it. Just God kind of likes to flirt with zealots. God doesn't want to encourage people to be zealots because zealots can be dangerous for society. And again, we care very much what's the shape of society, what it looks like. We don't want people to be so zealous that they're stabbing people in the streets over perceived sins and stuff. Hence the Pinchas problem. But remember, even though the in Brit Shalom, the Vav in Shalom is broken to show that God doesn't really like when you stab people in the middle of the street, God was still kind of cool with it. God still gave him the words still say he gave Pinchas his Brit Shalom. So maybe he's, it's like, there's a tension there with zealotry, right? God likes when you like God. The more you like God, the more God is happy with that. We even read in God in Search of Man when we're reading Heschel about how God is searching for you. God is reaching out to you. And if you reach out to God, there's a connection that can be made. We can feel this. All the more so if you're a zealot, right? That's where it gets dangerous. We don't want to encourage people to be zealots like that. It's not good for society, but it's about finding a good, like with everything in Judaism, it's about finding a good balance. We want people to love God and do what's right. We don't want them to be zealots exactly. So okay, Amatyahu sent envoys and he says, okay, Israel, you might be the first third generation king of Israel, but I am the descendant of King David. And I say, why don't we go fight a little bit? And so in verse 9, King Yehoash of Israel sent back this message to King Amatyahu of Judah. The thistle in Lebanon sent this message to the cedar in Lebanon. Give your daughter to my son in marriage. But a wild beast in Lebanon went by and trampled down the thistle. What?
A poet.
Yes, exactly. We're getting some poetry. So what is he saying here? What is he saying? The thistle in Lebanon sent this message to the cedar in Lebanon. Who is the thistle and who is the cedar? Doesn't really matter, right? I mean, I guess it doesn't.
The thistle was Israel and the cedar is
Judah. Sure. Let's say it is.
Okay.
Give your daughter to my son in marriage. It's not really about marriage. He's not asking about a marriage. He's saying, what you're saying to me is, let us join together. Yeah, I'm going to beat you and we're going to be one country. Because we ought to be one country. He's saying, that's what you're saying to me when you say, let's fight.
Yes.
But a wild beast in Lebanon went by and trampled down the thistle. What does that mean? Not only are the thistle and the cedar not the same thing, i.e., these are no longer, he's saying, the same country. Right? He's making a point. You're saying there may have been a time at which we really were one people in one country. Now we are two peoples in two countries that worship the same God.
Makes sense.
Right? Everyone understands that Pakistan and Saudi Arabia both exist and are both Muslim countries, but they're not the same country. That's what he's saying here. But he's not just saying that. The wild beast thing is he's saying not only that, but our position is much more precarious than yours. So this is kind of a jerk move. This is a big thing. Or not every position is the same level of precarious. In verse 10, he says, because you have defeated Edom, you have become arrogant. Stay home and enjoy your glory. Stay home in Jerusalem. Enjoy that you beat Edom, rather than provoke disaster and fall, dragging Judah down with you. Okay, you beat Edom. Don't think you can beat me too. Remember, I beat Aram back, he's saying. Right? He's saying, I was best. You think your God's with you, but I was best friends with Elisha, the great successor to Elijah. Who are you, and who's your prophet? I think so. Essentially, he's like, you think God is on your team, but I might not be so sure. Is one of the things I think is being intimated by the king of the north of Israel. So he says, you know what? Rather than have a war and you fall and Judah fall, I am more powerful than you. And I don't want you and your men to suffer. There isn't need for it. Right? He's saying something. No, this is actually good politicking. He's saying two things. He's saying we are not the same country, but that doesn't mean we have to be enemies. Give up your plans to reunify. Right? He's being South Korea. And he's saying, look, if you'll just accept that we're two countries, then we can exist and it can be fine. We don't have to fight. We can be two countries that worship the same God and are the root of the same people. What we won't do is allow you to take us over because we're our own country now. Again, he's a third generation king. This is not like previous generations where, he's got people who worked for him, who helped raise him, who worked for his parents, and it's become a generational thing, and that leads to probably lots of things like entitlement, but maybe also piety, and maybe also, in this case, arrogance. Since both sides, here's the thing: both sides have recently won victories, so both sides have reason to believe they are strong and that God is with them. That's a dangerous position to be in.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is not Samaria had its forces beat down to where they're...
But remember, that happened, and then when Elisha was going to die, hey, Patty.
Hi, I'm here to get some tables from upstairs.
Oh, okay. When the king and Elisha, they did the thing, they shot the bow, they did the hitting, and he said, you're going to win. And then he won, and he pushed them out. And so he feels like we're strong, we're winning, we're good. The Southern Kingdom just beat Edom. They feel like we're strong, we're winning, we're good. That's a dangerous place to be because everyone feels like they can win. When everyone feels like they can win a war, that's how you get World War I, right? Because everyone felt they could win, and that it wouldn't take that long to do so. Unfortunately, war doesn't always work out that way. It doesn't always go the way you think.
That's the problem today. And I'd love to see a new regime.
You what?
I'd love to see a new regime in the questions how to get through.
The left and that.
But it's the same thing. It's that Iranian some other forms.
Okay. Because you right, okay. So don't let him bring you down with you. Verse 11, but Amaziah paid no heed. So King Jehoash of Israel advanced, and he and King Amaziah of Judah confronted each other at Beit Shemesh in Judah. Beit Shemesh is still around, by the way, near Jerusalem. It's not that far from Jerusalem. It's like 30-minute drive. Maybe a little more. Judah was routed by Israel, and the Judahites, fled to their homes. King Jehoash of Israel captured King Amatziyahu, son of Jehoash, son of Ahaziah of Judah, at Beit Shemesh. He marched on Jerusalem, and he made a breach of 400 cubits in the wall of Jerusalem, from the Ephraim gate to the corner gate. He carried off all the gold and silver and all the vessels that there were in the temple and in the treasuries of the royal palace, as well as hostages, and he returned to Samaria.
Kind of the sore thumb in Jewish history, isn't it?
It's hard to read. It's exactly what you see anytime any nation conquers a nation, to be frank. There was a battle near Jerusalem. When they won, they just went straight up to the capital. They breached the walls of Jerusalem. The first people to breach the walls of Jerusalem are not the Romans, they're not the Babylonians, they're not the Assyrians. They're the Israelites. The Israelites are the first to breach the walls of Jerusalem.
And to ransack the temple.
No, well, I mean, to ransack it again. Whether they ransacked it or he took it.
Yes.
He could have said, "Priests, give it to me. I'm the victor, and my priests are here to take it from you." And you know what I mean? Like, it could have been different. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, it was undoubtedly violent. It was undoubtedly, and it's hard to see that it was a Jewish kingdom, the northern kingdom, that did this. The other events, verse 15, the other events of Jehoash's reign and all his actions and exploits and his war with King Amatziyahu of Judah are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Jehoash rested with his ancestors and was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. His son Jeroboam succeeded him as king. This is what we said before. This is Jeroboam II. Jeroboam II. Who's the fourth king of in a row. King Amatziyahu, son of Joash of Judah, lived 15 years after the death. So he didn't kill him or take him. He left him there. After the death of King Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz of Israel. So he lived for another 15 years. The other events of Amatziyahu's reign are recorded in the annals of the kings of Judah. A conspiracy was formed against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. But they sent agents after him to Lachish, and they killed him there. They brought back his body on horses, and he was buried with his ancestors in Jerusalem, in Ir David, the city of David. Then all the people of Judah took Azariah, is that Azariah, right, yeah, who was 16 years old, and proclaimed him king to succeed his father Amatziyahu. It was he who rebuilt Eilat, or built Eilat the first time, and restored it to Judah after King Amatziyahu rested with his ancestors. In the 15th year of King Amatziyahu, son of Joash of Judah. Okay, so now again we got that he died and his son took over. Now we got to go back a little bit to when the king who won that war died, and his son, Jeroboam II. So King Jeroboam, son of Joash of Israel, became king in Samaria for 41 years. He did what was displeasing to God. He did not depart from all the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit. In other words, again, from the beginning, nothing changed. It was he who restored the territory of Israel from Levo Hamat to the Sea of the Arava, in accordance. Now again, Sea of the Arava means the Dead Sea. it takes over a bunch of that mountainous West Bank territory and restores control over it. In accordance with the promise that the Eternal, the God of Israel, had made through God's servant, the prophet Jonah, son of Amittai, from Gath Hefer. This prophet prophesied that the kingdom of Israel would eventually expand to the borders of the days of King Solomon. And this is them doing that because they got big again.
Greater Israel.
No. No. Greater Israel goes from from Iraq to the Nile, to Egypt. But to be fair, that was only a possible greatest borders. That was a do not go further than these borders, not you must fill to expand to these borders. God never needed us to expand beyond our tribal borders. And our tribal borders are very much, to be fair, they are also a little bit on the east bank of the Jordan River, but they're not all the way to Damascus and to the Euphrates and to the that's nonsense. Anyone who says Israel's trying to do that is crazy. They're lying to you. And they're not even lying well. They're just being a bad person. Okay. Verse 26, for God saw the very bitter plight of Israel, with neither bond nor free left, and with none to help Israel. And God resolved not to blot out the name of Israel from under heaven, and he delivered them through Jeroboam, son of Joash. The other events of Jeroboam's reign and all his actions and exploits, how he fought and recovered Damascus and Hamath for Judah in Israel, are recorded it really from Hamath to Damascus. In other words, remember when Solomon was king, Israel controlled Damascus, the capital of the Arameans? Well, now they do again for this brief period of time. Again, they, like the prophecy said, in this period under King Jeroboam II, they expand to the borders limits that King Solomon had held of the northern kingdom. They don't control Judah specifically, though Judah may be slightly a vassal state in this period to the Israelites. Right. And then what it's saying here is when it says for Judah, what it's saying, the commentator says, since these cities were conquered by the Judean King David, Jeroboam restored them to Judah, despite the fact that they were captured by the soldiers of Israel. Which again is, I think, a deeply devout move. To show honor for God's servant David, to say, David did this, so these are not my cities. These are your cities. Because in honor of your father, David. Right? The northern kingdom, after all, does not descend from David. Yeah.
And the northern kingdom is not always bad.
No, the northern kingdom is not always bad.
Not militarily, they seem pretty effective.
Right now they're certainly very effective. So that's all recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Jeroboam rested with his ancestors, the kings of Israel, and his son Zechariah succeeded him as king. Zechariah was the 5th generation from Jehu. So Israel will have gotten to 5 generations now. Quite a dynasty that they've got going. Not a lot of dynasties get to 5 in any kingdom anywhere, by the way. Nowadays, I guess, when nobody fights over stuff and all monarchies are fake, it's not such a big deal. They're all just like for show. But back when they actually had absolute power and stuff, it was not common. So in any event,
We know that in 710, Assyria is going to come and take over the northern kingdom.
728.
728, okay.
Yeah.
Where are we about now?
Oh, you're gonna get me. 1 second. I think I can look this up. I'm just gonna try and find it if I can. His reign is generally about 786 to 746.
So we're getting close.
Yeah. His son Zechariah succeeds him. I think he might be the last king, Zechariah. But no, sorry. He is the last king of Yehu. But then they have they have a run of them up to their defeat is the thing. But yeah, after Zechariah is the beginning of the real. So this is their peak right now during Jeroboam II, and we're about to since we're about in the at about 750 right now, we've got about 25 more years until they're done. So yeah, it's going to be a pretty quick. Zechariah's not going to do too well. He's going to be done, and then there's going to be a couple kings. I think Hoshea is the last king of Israel. I'm not sure. Let me look that up for you.
Wow.
No, Hoshea is the prophet.
Right, but so was Zechariah.
Oh no, it is Hoshea. It is Hoshea.
Which is fascinating. You have names of prophets who are also the kings of Israel.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like Josh, remember?
Yeah, okay.
I'm just confirming something.
What was like
Yeah,
Josh?
I mean, they're not the same. They're not the same person.
Same name.
Frequent names.
And they're actually active in about the same period, but they're not the same person. But of course, remember, it'll be another 150 years that that Judah exists beyond the Northern Kingdom.
Right.
Yeah. Do people want to keep going, or do we want to not keep going? It's up to.
I love it.
Okay, we can keep going.
I think it's interesting.
Terrific. We'll see exactly what we get to. Okay, chapter 15. We'll do chapter 15. In the 27th year of King Jeroboam of Israel, Azariah, son of King Amaziahu of Judah, became king. He was 16 years old. We heard about this before when he became king, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Yechaliah. Yechaliahu, sorry. In Hebrew, it's Yechaliahu of Jerusalem. Again, you're getting a lot of these. Jerusalem is becoming such a big, important city that there are all these other important families that live there full time. And so this is the second wife in a row that he's gotten just from Jerusalem, like of Jerusalem, not of any other town in Judah. There are other places in Judah, but obviously by far the biggest city is Jerusalem.
Two psychiatrists in the room.
Yeah.
Do we think that 16 years old at that time in our history, their frontal lobe was formed? So we're still, so he's still basically.
That know stuff.
Right, he'll have had advisors, and whether he listened to them or not. It doesn't sound like he had a regent. When they're younger than that, generally they would have done a regent for them.
Oh.
Would serve one of their mother generally
Gotcha.
would have, because if their father was alive, he would be king. If there's like a 13-year-old or a 12-year-old who takes over, generally their mother acts as regent until they're old enough to take over.
I was gonna say they're still kind of a baby at that age.
16-year-old, yeah. So, but good news again. 52 years, we knew something right happened, and we find in 3 he did what was pleasing to God, just as his father and grandfather had done. But in the same way, the shrine in verse 4, the shrines were not removed. The people continued to sacrifice. Again, this same one problem was still happening, but in every other way, he was pleasing to God, and God was really happy with this, with all this, for the moment. Verse 5, God struck the king with a plague, and he was a leper until the day of his death. He lived in isolated quarters, while Yotam, the king's son, was in charge of the palace and governed the people of the land. So again, leprosy is a ritual impurity. and lepers aren't allowed to live inside the walls of Jerusalem. That's also important for sanitary reasons. Leprosy is a contagious skin disease. So the idea, the tzaraat is a contagious skin disease, and so they don't want you to live within the walls of a city because you'll spread it to everyone in the city. So the king actually couldn't live in Jerusalem. He lived in a isolated house outside the city. But he wasn't made not king. He was still the king. But in practice, he couldn't really govern the country. So his son, Yotam, was in charge of the household and doing the work of the king. You know, people would come and he would sit on the throne and he would hear them. So he really was functionally king. It says it's unclear whether this situation lasted for an extended period of time or whether Yotam was considered the actual king at the time or the prince regent. He might have just been prince regent. The other events of Azariah's reign and all his actions are recorded in the annals of the kings of Judah. Azariah rests, so he didn't really do that much. He reigned forever, but also at some point he got sick and moved out of the city, and his son started being king even before his reign started. That's what you should take from that. Even though he was a good guy, at some point he got sick and he had to move out of the city, and his son took over. His son then succeeded him as king after he was buried with his ancestors. Okay, now we get the sad story. Verse 8. In the 38th year of King Azariah of Judah, Zechariah, son of Jeroboam II, became king over Israel and Samaria for 6 months. He did what was displeasing to God as his predecessors had done. He did not depart from the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nevat, had caused Israel to commit. Shalom, son of Yavesh, conspired against him and struck him down before the people and killed him and succeeded him as king. So it's some sort of serious rebellion. They pull the king out of his palace in front of the people and kill him in front of them. And this brigand who does it becomes king. So there's 5 generations. Yehu's line. Boom, boom, gone. The other events of Zechariah's reign are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. Whatever there was in 6 months to write about. This was in accord with the word that God had spoken to Yehu. 4 generations of your descendants shall occupy the throne of Israel. And so it came about, and so it was. V'yehi chen. So it's saying this one's reign didn't really count, right? Or it's like he got the 4, the 5th generation is 4 beyond him. Okay, but that's all you get. So he got that long, but then it was over. So you should understand that even though this is clearly bad for the kingdom and probably not good, it falls within the line of what God said was going to happen. Now, it could have been that he reigned for 40 years and then peacefully turned it into a democracy. That would have fulfilled God's prophecy too, technically. But this also does. We don't know how it happened. Right. When God says something's going to happen, it could happen any number of ways. Unfortunately, this is probably one of the worst. But in any event, there you go. Shalom, son of Yavesh, became king in the 39th year of King Uzziah of Judah. Uzziah, that's right. And he reigned in Samaria 1 month. Again, brigands who take over, it's usually not a good situation. Then Menachem, son of Gadi, set out from Tirzah and came to Samaria. He attacked Shalom, son of Yavesh, in Samaria and killed him and succeeded him as king. Right? Shalom had no legitimate claim to the throne, hadn't proved himself worthy of anything. A stronger man just killed him and took his place. This has become nothing. This kingdom that was really strong just a couple of years ago is now like a law is falling apart. So now we've got King Menachem, son of Gadi of Tirzah. The other events of Shalom's reign and the conspiracy that he formed are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. At that time, marching from Tirzah, Menachem subdued Tifsha and all who were in it and its territory, and because it did not surrender, he massacred its people and and ripped open all its pregnant women. Menachem, who had a military background, adopted the cruel foreign practice of tearing open the stomachs of pregnant women. Again, this was not allowed in Judaism, but it was something other kingdoms would do when they conquered cities. So him doing it is very bad.
You almost, at least in my mind, the association is rape as a
It's not
crime
rape.
of
It's
war. No, this isn't
cutting
rape.
open and-
This is even worse, but in some sense to me, they're aligned, the mutilation of a woman's procreative abilities.
Sure. It's evil. I mean, it's obvious. Everyone looks at it and goes, "Wow, that's evil." Like nobody. I don't think anybody today could look at that and not go, "Wow, that's evil." You know what I mean? Like, but we have good Jewish values. In the 39th year of King Azariah of Judah, Menachem, son of Gadi, became king over Israel and Samaria for 10 years. He did what was displeasing to God. Throughout his days, he did not depart from the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nevat, had caused Israel to commit. King Pul of Assyria invaded the land, and Menachem gave Pul 1,000 talents of silver that he might support him and strengthen his hold on the kingdom, right? He said, like Herod would do later with the Romans, he said, I'll give you money, and you will say that I'm king over Israel. Because again, he's just some brigand. He's just trying to hold on to power. That's all he cares about. So he gives him the money of the kingdom in order that he can do it. Menachem exacted, but Menachem didn't use his own money. He doesn't have any. Menachem exacted the money from Israel by means of a tax. Every man had to pay 50 shekels of silver for the king of Assyria. The king of Assyria withdrew and did not remain in the land. According to one estimate, 50 shekels at that time could support a single person for a year. So imagine giving a whole year of your salary. Imagine if they said, okay, everyone's got to pay $70,000 so that we can give tribute to some other country. Rough. The other events of Menachem's reign and all his actions are recorded in the annals of the kings of Judah. Menachem rested with his ancestors, and his son Pekahiah, is that it? Wow, that would Pekahiah. Yeah, I was right. Pekahiah succeeded him as king. We're keeping going with the Samaria kings. In the 50th year of King Azariah reigned for 52 years. So in the 50th year, 2 years before he dies, Pekahiah, son of Menachem, became king over Israel and Samaria for 2 years. So this dynasty, 12 years. He did what was displeasing to God. He did not depart from the sins, etc., and so forth. His aide, Pekah, son of Remaliah, conspired against him and struck him down in the royal palace in Samaria. With him were 50 Gileadites, with men from Argob and Aryeh. And he killed him and succeeded him as king. Right? The Romans just stole the whole Caesar thing from this, right? That's basically what this is. 30 of them get together in the palace and they all stab him at once. So they kill him. They all get together and kill the king. And so there you go. Menachem's line done. We're moving on. Again, this is not the way a kingdom that's going to last a long time operates. It's a lot of murder, not a lot of succession and, counselors that last for generations and serve for 30, 40 years. That's how a good kingdom runs in this era. This is not. Yeah.
And they make that very clear, the 50th year of King.
Right, exactly, of Azariah, right.
Yeah, stability in Judah.
Right, Judah has this continuing stability, which will contribute to their longevity, whereas we're about to see we're at this point, one second, we're at, there are only 2 more kings. Pekah is the second to last king, the guy who just took over. There's only 1 king after him. I'm saying we're at the end. Okay. In the 52nd year, before he's dead, of King Azariah of Judah, Pekah, son of Remaliah, became king over Israel and Samaria for 20 years. Well, again, but then we're at the end again. Like he did what was displeasing to God. Again, this doesn't change. He didn't turn away from the evil that Jeroboam, son of Nevat, had caused Israel to commit. In the days of King Pekah of Israel, King Tiglat-Pileser of Assyria.
Here we go.
Yeah, if you know that name, you're like, uh-oh. Tiglath-Pileser is one of those names, one of those. So Assyria is finally rising. It's no longer Aram Damascus. Who is it now? It's the Assyrians. The Neo-Assyrian Empire is here. And finally, what are we seeing? What does this moment signify more than we've seen at any point since the beginning of the Torah? You'll never guess it, but I'm going to ask you anyway. This, my friends, is a historical, epic, epochal shifting moment. This is the end of the late Bronze Age collapse. And the beginning of the restoration of the great powers of the ancient Near East. For 3 centuries, they have been subdued. Their defeat at the hands of the Sea Peoples and whatever plagues and whatever fell upon them that caused them to recede into themselves in Iraq, in southern Turkey, northern Syria, and in Egypt is over. And they back. And that's bad news for us. Yeah. Because Israel and Judah rose in a time where great powers were absent from this crucial via maris, the sea route that connects Africa, Asia, and Europe. And so a new group of powerful, unified, one God worshiping Canaanites, the Israelites, were able to take control of this area and build a people and a narrative about their history and their relationship with God. Unfortunately, history plays in its own way, and as these great powers rise, we will see that it is hard for a divided people to stand against them. King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria came and captured Ion, Avel, Beit Makkah, Yanoach, Kedesh, Chazor. Chazor again on the border with. This is a town that we had captured from Aram. They're coming. They're coming. Feel their presence growing south towards Israel. Gilead, Galilee, and the entire region of Naphtali. And now they're in. And he deported the inhabitants to Assyria. He conquered the territories of the northern tribes and took their inhabitants with him, in accordance with the generalists. Again, I told you earlier, this is how the Assyrians operate. They take the leadership from areas so that there can't be a rebel, and they replace them with a foreign leadership class that has money or whatever, but doesn't speak the language and doesn't worship the same gods, and nobody knows them. This is where the Samaritans come from, by the way. They will move to Samaria, and they will be entranced with the God of Israel. They will move there and find out from the people that live, the Amei Haaretz, the people of the land, the Jews, the Israelites who still live in the land of Israel in Samaria. They will find out about the one God. They will find out about our God. And they will say, we will be Jews, just like the Israelites in the land that we have been moved to. And then, of course, when the Jews return from Babylon, they say, we are the Jews, like you. We worship God, like you. But there's something they didn't reckon with. We're not just a religion. We're a people. And you can't, without the authority of the Jewish people, convert to the Jewish people. And so the Samaritans don't get to just choose to be Jewish. And unfortunately, that leads to conflict because they believe that they have sworn their hearts to the God of Israel. But they didn't do it with any Jews guiding them in this process. So they've done things differently, not quite right. It's like if someone walked in and said, it's like simulacrum. It's like almost real, but not quite right. And it really upsets the Jews that come back. Anyway, but we'll get to that. In any event, he deported the inhabitants to Assyria. And by the way, here's our last guy, another conspirer. Verse 30, Hoshea, son of Elah, conspired against Pekah, son of Remaliah, attacked him and killed him. He succeeded him as king in the 20th year of Yotam, son of Uzziah. Remember, another long-reigning king. That's anyway. Uzziah reigned for a while after Ahaziah, and then Yotam reigns for. Anyway, don't worry about it. The other events of Pekach's reign and all his actions are recorded in the annals of the kings of Israel. In the 2nd year of King Pekach, son of Remaliah. Okay, now we're going south. Yotam, son of King Uzziah of Judah, became king. He was 25 years old. Now remember, he'd been prince regent for a couple of years, but now he became king. His dad was sick. He's 25 years old and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Yerusha, daughter of Zadok.
Priest.
Well, he's a Zadok. He's not that Zadok, because who did that Zadok anoint? Solomon. That was like 200 years ago. That was like 230 years ago. So it's not that one, but a lot of the high priestly class repeat names.
Right.
Zadok is a very common priestly name. So don't worry about it. But yes, Zadok is also the name of the priest that works with Nathan to anoint Solomon as king. He did what was pleasing to God, just as his father and grandfather and great-grandfather had done. However, again, sorry, the shrines were not removed. The people continued to unlawfully sacrifice and make offerings at the shrines. It was he who built the upper gate of the house of God, the temple. So again, he helped fortify and strengthen and improve the temple. The other events of Yotam's reign and all his actions are recorded in the annals of the kings of Judah. And now we'll get a little. This is a problem. Again, we're getting towards the end. In those days, God began to incite King Rezin of Aram, who still existed even though Assyria was around, and Pekach, son of Remaliah, who got killed by Hoshea, but not yet. Against Judah. Yotam rested with his ancestors, and this could also indicate why Judah didn't try and help Israel more against Assyria. Yotam rested with his ancestors, and he was buried with his ancestors in the city of his forefather David. His son Ahaz succeeded him as king. Okay, we will wrap up there. In the next time we meet, we will also discuss